Hi, I'm Jessica Martin, and today I'm inviting you to join me in reliving an adventure that I took in 2019. By day, I'm a family lawyer, but my favorite hobby is planning and experiencing travel all over the world. This travelogue, which I have entitled North to Alaska, is a recount of a 2019 Viking cruise that my family took from Vancouver to Anchorage. This trip was 10 nights due north. We had previously done a Norwegian Alaskan cruise, which was a 7-night round trip out of Seattle with a total of 4 ports of call. The Viking cruise that we will be discussing today had 7, as well as the starting point in Vancouver and a little bit of time that we were able to spend in Anchorage before flying back. On day 1, we flew from Springfield to Vancouver, where we were met at the airport and given a bus tour from the airport over to the cruise terminal, which covered a large portion of the city. While we did not have time to stop the bus and explore the area directly, we were able to get information about town and see many of the sights as we drove by. As you can see from these pictures, the view from the cruise terminal is absolutely stunning. As we left Vancouver Harbor, the sun was starting to sink for the day, and you can see the beautiful mountains in the background and the city in the distance as we started to make our way out to sea. On the first full day on the boat, we sailed through an area called the SEYMOUR Narrows. So the entire day was spent on board the boat and just viewing the beautiful scenery around us, as well as exploring the amenities on the ship. Our first port of call was in KETCHIKAN. It is a beautiful city in a rainforested part of southeast Alaska. The town center is small and very walkable, and there is a small park that is also walkable from town. You can see there's a beautiful little creek that runs right through the center of the town area, and in the picture on the right hand side you can see a set of stairs that go up through the woods. That is part of the walkway that will take you from the downtown area out to the park. One of the cool things about traveling with Viking is that they include an excursion at every port of call. In Ketchikan, the included excursion was a trip to Potlatch Totem Park, which is a cultural park that has Native American totems. In particular, it is built on a fishing ground of the Tlingit tribe, and it has numerous residences and totems throughout the park that are explained to you by a private guide if you're going with your tour group excursion, or that you can explore yourself if you are attending on your own. In SITKA, Alaska, which was our second port of call, we actually arranged a private wildlife tour in the morning before we joined the included excursion for the afternoon. We saw more bald eagles in Alaska than I've ever seen anywhere else in my life, which was amazing. I believe we saw them in every city that we stopped in. Additionally, on the wildlife tour, we saw things like this cute little otter over here to the right. It was a beautiful morning out on the water, even though we didn't see a huge amount of wildlife that particular day. It is just a stunning area to get to cruise around and look at the shoreline. We also saw this lovely seal who had some attitude as we got closer to him. So for the included excursion in Sitka, we went to the National Historical Park, which was similar in some ways to the Potlatch Totem Park from Ketchikan. This one also included a tour guide who took us through and explained some of the different carvings on the different totems and allowed us to explore the area on our own. Skagway was one of my favorite stops by far. We had the opportunity while we were there to take a ride on the White Pass and Yukon Railway and to do a White Pass Summit excursion. In addition to the railway, there was also a park outside town, as well as the town itself. On the White Pass and Yukon route, there's a 40-mile round trip up to the White Pass summit and back, and the views from the vintage railway cars that you ride in are absolutely stunning. These are both pictures that were taken on that trip. And these are pictures that were taken from the town of Skagway itself. Like many of the little towns in Alaska, it was also a town that thrived and went into its boom season during the gold rush. And so many of the buildings date from that time frame. And then here you can see a glacier in the mountains in the picture on the right. Our next port of call was Juneau, which, as you know, is the state capital. So there were also some museums and things available to check out there. It was the biggest city that we stopped in as a port, and it had some really neat activities available. As you can see, the harbor was just gorgeous to the left. The picture on the right was taken as we went up the Mount Robert Tramway, which is the steepest, I believe, in the United States. So once we got to the top of the tramway, we were able to hike on some trails and explore the area at the top of Mount Roberts. There is also the ability to hike from the base to the top of Mount Roberts, which I didn't know was an option until my sister and brother-in-law completed that task. I think the tramway was certainly the easier way to go, but they are the adventurous sort. But the views from the top are just stunning, as you can see through these two pictures. After we finished hiking at the top of Mount Roberts, we rode the very steep tramway back down into town. Here on the left, you can see the Red Dog Saloon of fame from back in the mining days, as well as the old country song. The picture on the right I included because I thought the choice of decorative plants in Alaska was very entertaining. Many things that we would consider winter vegetables, be it this cabbage-like plant or kale or cabbages, both purple and green, were frequently found in flower beds. There are many salmon farming operations in Alaska, and we were there during salmon season in late July, and so we had the opportunity to see some of those hatcheries as fish were returning to them and they were capturing them for processing. You can see on the left some of the salmon that were returning to that particular hatchery. It was also very common to see seals hanging out in the water around the hatcheries to be opportunists. In fact, to me, it was far more fun to watch the seals trying to catch the salmon than it was to watch the salmon themselves. The included excursion for the port in Juneau was the Mendenhall Glacier. So we certainly took advantage of that. We were bused out to the glacier along with a stop that allowed us to take the picture on the left-hand side before we reached the glacier, which you see on the right-hand side. These were more pictures that were taken while we were at the glacier. The glacier itself is here on the bottom left. There were people we could see kayaking right out in front of it in that cold water, which actually looked fun if we had had the time. And then there's a large waterfall that you see on the bottom right that comes down to the right-hand side of the glacier as you're viewing it. Our next port of call was Icy Strait Point. This is effectively a tiny port that has been created purely for cruise ships. It is not a town in and of itself, but rather a greeting center where they connect you with different activities that you can pay to participate in. There are some short trails, there's zip lining, and there are some cultural performances that we'll get to later. However, less than 3 miles from Icy Strait Point is a little town called HOONAH, and that was a place that you could easily walk to from the port in Icy Strait Point. So it was certainly one of the more beautiful stops that we made, probably because it was in a less developed area. But my husband and I took the opportunity to walk from Icy Strait Point out to HOONAH, while the rest of our family went on a fishing trip. So there are some opportunities for fishing expeditions in this part of the world. And while we were walking in between those two stops, Icy Strait Point and HOONAH, we had the opportunity to view a whale. You can see the picture here on the right. And here are more pictures. Just walking down the edge of the road and seeing a whale in the water to the right was absolutely amazing. It was somewhat funny because there was a whaling boat that came along trying to follow the whale after we had spotted it. Additionally, again, the water was very undisturbed. There was not a lot of traffic going through, and we were able to see jellyfish and starfish just simply from looking down into the water. Just some more of the beautiful pictures that we were able to take at Icy Strait Point. This is the actual photo op on the left that most of the tourists were stopping at, and then on the right, that's a picture of as we were leaving the area that night on the boat. This was our second all on the boat day. There were only 2 days that we didn't stop in a port. The first one being the first day on board where we went through the SEYMOUR Narrows. The other day was this day when we went to the HUBBARD Glacier that you can see there in the background. So the HUBBARD Glacier was absolutely beautiful. It's amazing how the climate changes, and it is so cold to be outside on the deck of the boat in comparison with any of the ports where it was cool and rainy in late July, but it was cold. When we were approaching the HUBBARD Glacier, you can see the chunks of ice floating in the water there. Another thing that was somewhat surprising to me as we approached the HUBBARD Glacier, the number of seals that we could see was a pleasant surprise. The smell that accompanies them was a less pleasant surprise, but they were just really adorable, and it was awesome to get to see them. Another thing that you can see as you get close to great glaciers is something called calving, where a portion of the glacier falls off and into the water. And you can see a bit of that in these pictures where there's a splash, especially in the picture on the right-hand side down here at the front. And you, in addition to seeing the pieces split off and fall into the water, you can also hear them make these groaning, cracking sounds. It's just really, it really encompasses all of the senses. You see the glacier itself, you can hear the noises it makes, you can smell the seals, and it makes for a very memorable experience all around. We saw some sea lions over there to the left hanging out, and then there was just more pictures as we were turning around and leaving the area with the beach with the ice washing up on it. Our next stop was VALDEZ. I don't have a ton of pictures from the stop in VALDEZ because my family chose to go whitewater rafting, which everyone had a great time and enjoyed except my husband, who has made it clear he does not want to participate in any such adventure again. But before we scarred him with the whitewater rafting, we walked around town that morning. All of these ports are small enough that it is very easy to walk the entire town. So our first little jaunt of the morning took us past these beautiful scenes that you see here. We just took a little trail that ran through a park and circled back to town. We also had an opportunity after we went whitewater rafting to check out the VALDEZ Museum. It was a smaller museum and primarily focused on the wildlife of the area, but was certainly worth a visit. And then the bunny that you see on the left is one of the many bunnies that lived in a yard that was right along the street through the main part of VALDEZ. They had several bunnies that lived there, and it was just adorable. These are pictures of the harbor in VALDEZ as we were getting ready to leave. Seward, Alaska was our last stop for a port of call. We got to spend an entire day there before we left the next morning to head to Anchorage, and we just took the opportunity to explore the town that day. As you can see in the left hand picture, the Iditarod dog race starts there, and that is the mile marker 0 point. And as is true of many of the other ports, the viewpoints are just stunning looking back out into the harbor. There is a lake in town there's a park called the Two Lakes Park that had trails that went along the edge of the lakes that my husband and I explored. In the left-hand picture, you can see a little trek up the side of this mountain. We did learn that is something that you can climb, and in fact, once a year they do a race to the top of that mountain and back. We started up the base of it, realized that it was going to take us a very long time, and decided that we would use our time differently. Instead, we went to the Exit Glacier, which I would absolutely recommend. We had to get a cab because it is outside town, I won't say quite a distance, substantially further than it was realistic to walk. Probably a 15-minute car ride. When you get there, it's approximately a 1.5 miles back to the glacier that you walk through the park. The picture on the left was as we were starting the trek. The picture in the middle is midway-ish. And then the picture on the right-hand side is the Exit Glacier up close. You could see the difference between the left and the right, and you can see the little waterfalls coming off the edge of the rocks. The Seward Sea Life Center was the included excursion for the stop in Seward, and it is absolutely wonderful. It is just a high-class aquarium. The outdoor area was wonderful. That's where we got to see this adorable little seal to your left. They also had puffins out there, as you see on the right, and it was very much worth the time to check out. I would absolutely recommend it if you ever make it to Seward. And these are pictures of the harbor in Seward that were taken from the boat before we left. And then the last leg of this journey was a bus that the cruise company, Viking, arranged for us to take from Seward to Anchorage, and that drive was also stunning. After we got back to Anchorage, we were able to explore the town, do a little bit of souvenir shopping, and check out just a few things that were all within walking distance. And then we were bussed over to the airport for a red eye back to Dallas, and then we arrived back in Springfield the next morning. So I would absolutely recommend the Alaskan cruise in general. We had a good experience when we went with Norwegian, but I really feel that the Viking experience is probably the highest quality available in that market, simply because of how they organized everything and included the excursions in the trip, unlike other companies. So I hope you look forward to trying this adventure yourself sometime, and thanks for joining me.